You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 212 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. It's our harvest special for 2023 today, and we'll be hearing from 6 farmers up and down the country about their experiences of harvest this year. First up is Richard Heady in Buckinghamshire.
Hi, it's Richard Heady, aka Heady's Farm, and I'm coming to you from a bean field in North Buckinghamshire. Like the rest of the country, we've had a lot of rain, so harvest has been broken up by periods of wet, which has really damaged the soil. You know, trying to move a combine harvester and heavy trailers full of grain around the farm with wet soil conditions has really caused a lot of compaction. So there's some issues we're going to have to deal with for the rest of the year. So we've just finished harvesting our beans. That just leaves us one crop left to go, which is our spring oats. Spring oats are a weird one this year. The actual oat seed heads have kind of died off, but the plant is still living with really green stalk. It's chucking up new tillers, which are fresh green seeds, which is going to make it really difficult to harvest because we've got the really ripe stuff and then we've got the really green stuff, which is going to make the sample really damp. So I'm not sure how it's going to pan out, but that's my next job. We started off with our winter barley. That did really well and gave us lots of promise for the rest of harvest, but since then it's really gone downhill. So the wheat's averaged at best, and we had some okay fields, but we've also had some quite poor yielding fields. And then our beans that I've just done have been pretty terrible, really. The crows had a good pecking at them earlier in the year, which reduced the plant numbers, and then I think the really dry June and really hot June just killed them off early. So, you know, it's been an okay harvest, but it's far from our best, and I'm quite glad to get through it. The positives I'm seeing at the minute, though, is the farm's looking quite good. All our environmental stewardship margins and headlands have come into flower and looking fantastic. And also this year, any wet parts of the farm that haven't really grown very well, or areas of beans that the crows decimated, I planted with sunflowers and mustard, and they're all in bloom at the minute, and they've grown fantastically well. So we've got no end of pollinators living off them, and hopefully the sunflowers will give lots of seeds for the birds too. So that's kind of what we're trying to do at the minute on the farm. We're just going to farm really well for nature and also make a sustainable farming business. Cheers, Ben.
Richard Heady. Next, we're heading to Suffolk for John Pawsey's harvest report.
Hi Ben, John Pawsey here from Simpling Park Farm, ringing in with my harvest report. As of today, the 22nd of August, all being well, we've got about 6 days left. We all seem to be the last people to finish around us, and I think it's because all of our crops come together. We don't have any early harvestable crops like oilseed rape or winter barley, and so it all comes together, and we're just, scrambling around trying to get everything into the grain store. Bizarrely enough, the first crops that we had ready here this year were the spring oats and the spring barley. Some of the barley had sort of necked a bit, and so it was quite difficult to get, but we've got a Convio Flex cutter bar on our combine, so that's been a godsend in those kind of situations. The yield, we haven't actually verified all our yields yet, but I'm going to be slightly disappointed, I think, with our spring crop yields. They're down this year. We drilled everything in February. Whether or not that had anything to do with it, I'm not sure, but we did actually have some spring oats that we drilled in March, late March, and actually they've yielded no better than the February drilled stuff. We've lost a bit of yield on the headlands, actually, and I think actually that is probably a February thing, in the way that it was very wet after that and cold, and maybe a bit of the seed rotted in the ground. But anyway, a bit disappointing on the spring crops. We've done quite a bit of winter wheat now, which has been quite variable. We've had some disappointing yields, but some almost record yields in one or two fields. So that's been encouraging. So probably going to end up with an average wheat harvest, I suspect. We're just at the moment doing our wheat and bean bi-crop, which I think is going to be the crop of the season because it's yielding incredibly well. Lots of beans in there, which is always good because that's really the intended crop at that part of the rotation. And we're going to crack on with those today. All in all, it's probably going to be average, possibly a little bit below average. Prices are coming down. I'm not sure that this is going to be a harvest that we're going to remember with huge fondness. Been catchy as well. We've been going at every single possible moment we can in between the showers. We're in a bit of a dry spell at the moment, but basically we've been starting at about 20% and just getting it into the grain store and drying it as soon as possible. But anyway, Ben, hopes all's well with you, and here's the end of my harvest report.
This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, A-Plan Rural. Why did I want to collaborate with A-Plan Rural? Well, having got to know them, their team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. So it seemed quite a good fit. Quite frankly, together we will be able to do a lot more. A-Plan Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences, and they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to A-Plan Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers. Now we go over to Cambridgeshire to hear from Martin Lines.
Hello Ben, it's Martin Lines, farming in Cambridgeshire, growing mainly combinable crops. This harvest in this last 12 months has again been really impacted by weather and changing climate. If we look back to last autumn, we had extremely dry soils. We delayed drilling as much as possible to try and establish some stale seed beds, which we managed to do by drilling late into October and getting some populations of blackgrass germinating. But that impact was evident by lack of germination come spring, with some disappointing controls achieved and just disappointing levels of blackgrass control in a number of fields across the farm. We went through a really dry winter, come into February with really friable, heavy clay soils being really friable. Took the opportunity to drill a lot of our spring crops and they established well. But then we moved into a really wet March. So that means some of the February established crops were checked by the high rainfall events and sort of stunted some of the growth. We're unable to get some of the fertiliser applications on as early as we needed, and some of the pesticide and fungicide programme. So we could see the evidence of that coming through the year. It has really opened my eyes, the need to really focus on soil health and building fertility into our soil, and having the resilience of managing to change weather patterns, coping with changing weather patterns for our soil. So we come through into harvest with a real mixed bag of crops, most of them looking fairly well, but some of them being disappointing when the combine had gone through. Very varied yields. I think that our most disappointing crop would be our winter beans. Looked stunning all the way through the season. Really pleased with them. They podded up really well, but just disappointing when we come to harvest. I thought they were going to be our best yielding crop for a number of years. Our winter wheats and first wheats did well. We dried very little wheat this year again. We're very lucky with the capacity we have with our combine and using cam grain storage in trying to secure the quality in our milling wheats and let them do a little bit of drying where needed. We had winter barley. The yields were very varied, really sort of depending on the quality of the soil. We managed to get most of that in, quite a lot of it after the delayed harvest because of a really wet July. But that was okay. Spring barleys have got in and got quality. Still to market quite a lot of it, so hopefully premiums will go up in where we've maintained the quality. We've also particularly struggled this year doing a lot of grass and hay work under stewardship, so we can't cut till the 1st of July, and we've seen a really wet July, so we missed much of the opportunity by having fixed dates in hay management and not being able to start to July. We missed the June window of all that nice weather. And we're still trying to gather in some of our hay now and trying to find windows of opportunity between workload. So on a summary, it's been a challenging year, but actually some of it's been very pleasing. We've seen much of our costs keeping low and some of our yields been pleasing, but it's given us more lessons to learn in how we manage our farming system and be more resilient in ever-changing climate and weather patterns, but also market prices and input prices. We look forward to the year ahead. We'll be tweaking our rotation a little bit, and hopefully we'll see the SFI being available soon, and we can see how we can get some income streams from that in improving our practices. Hope everyone else's harvest has gone well, and hopefully catch up with many people soon.
Martin Lines. We're now going to head slightly further north to Lincolnshire and Charles Anyan's report.
Harvest has been and gone here in Lincolnshire, hampered obviously by a fairly dismal July where the sun just didn't shine. I presume that's similar to the rest of the country. Winter barley, yeah, fine. Averaged approximately 7.8 tonnes to the hectare. Oilseed rape was a disaster as always, but we really struggled with establishment in the really dry, hot conditions last summer when we were putting it in middle of August. So that was, unmentionable really. We've just drilled our oilseed rape again for 2024 harvest, and we will hopefully get better conditions, but I think this is last chance saloon for oilseed rape. If it doesn't perform this year, we will cut it adrift. Winter wheat was pleasing. Quality in the skyfall for our Warburtons wasn't fantastic, but it was there in the hole, which is a miracle when you hear that most of milling wheat this year went as feed. We weren't quite top spec, but we were certainly second spec. Fell down mainly on protein, but I think that was probably to do with when the protein dose of nitrogen went on. It was just dry again and didn't get washed in. That is my thoughts. A feed wheat, bushels let it down, but we had some decent second wheat in Gleam. And then beans, probably 3.3 tonnes per hectare. It hasn't been over a weighbridge yet, but there were spring beans, and not fantastic, but they should hopefully be an excellent base for a decent crop of wheat next year. 2023 harvest done, as I said, not a great harvest, not a bad harvest, but compared to what a lot of farmers around the world are going through, especially Ukraine, we are very much in a charmed position. Thank you.
Lincolnshire farmer Charles Anyan. Just a little more about our primary sponsor, A-Plan Rural. They provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit aplan.co.uk/rural. That's aplan.co.uk/rural. Next up is Andrew Wilson in North Yorkshire.
Hey up, Ben. Harvest report for you from a drizzly North Yorkshire 2023. Winter barley was a bit of a stop-start affair, very wet, complete pain in the backside, took 17 days to cut 98 acres, produced a very average result. Straw took a bit of drying, but we got it eventually. Wheat, about reasonable average, nothing broken any records, no real disasters, all between sort of 8 and 10.5 tonnes to the hectare. So reasonably all right if you ignore the price of the fertiliser and the fact that it's not worth very much at the present moment. Spring beans, a bit disappointing, 1.25 tonnes just over to the acre. Winter beans a little bit better, 1.75 tonnes or thereabouts, depending on where we were. Spring barley is sprayed off, lots of secondary growth in the bottom of it, not looking anything fantastic. In fact, it's poor. Spring oats replaced oilseed rape, which was one of my worst decisions to drill that stuff last summer. We knocked that out in March and drilled it with oats, which look fantastic, but they're currently at least a week off ready. Potatoes and sugar beet, I've enjoyed the rain. Potatoes look better than the beet, so let's hope for better things later this back end. Currently in the midst of trying to dry straw, bale straw. The hay became haylage yesterday very quickly, and we cover crops to drill next week. That and a pig batch change, so it's keeping us out of mischief. Catch you soon. Cheers. Bye.
Andrew Wilson. And finally, we head to the very north of Scotland to Caithness to hear from Ranald Angus.
Hi Ben, Ranald Angus here with the harvest update for the far north of Scotland for harvest 2023. In the county of Caithness, there is really 3 cereals that are grown, with the exception of a 4th cereal being a small amount of beer, which is a traditional Scottish cereal. There's a guy that grows a little bit of that, but really the main players in this part of the world are spring oats and spring barley, with a small amount of winter barley and also some very small amounts of winter oats. There are some winter wheats as well, and they will be getting cut probably in the next 7 to 10 days, and they look to be quite good just from observation at the edge of the field. I'd be very surprised if they are disappointing, because they certainly look good just observing from the edge of the field. Barley, winter barley was the first to get cut in the month of July, and ourselves, we cut some Valerie on the 23rd of July. We made a start, which was the earliest I've seen us cut winter barley in the short period of maybe 6 or 7 years that we've been growing it, and it worked away quite good. We would have been between 9.5 and 10 tonnes a hectare in yield once it was dried, and bushel weights would be mid to high 60s kilograms per hectolitre, which I think is quite good, and especially considering that our crop would be quite easily the most northerly crop of winter cereals in the UK. So I think I'm quite happy with how that's all panned out. The spring barleys are only just starting to come off the combine this week, the week commencing the 21st of August. Midweek, we saw combines rolling and the first few acres starting to go into store. But for the majority of the crop, I would say we would probably be looking at the middle or the end of next week before it really starts in earnest. And it'll be over the coming weeks then that we start to see the bulk of the harvest getting shifted. There are concerns over how the quality of malting barleys will look, as there has been an element of secondary growth in spring crops, and it's come from having a kind of dry period in the spring, which was then followed by a period of wet weather then, mostly in July, causing some later uptake of nitrogen and maybe some added vigour having received a bit of moisture, and that has not only pushed the harvest out a little bit as the crop will be a bit later in maturing, but it has also meant that the secondary growths have come in, and this will be a problem more so for malting. And in the south, areas to the south of us, Aberdeenshire, Murrayshire, Rossshire and the Black Isle, they are in the main throes of taking spring barley off, and they are seeing that there has been quality issues with this problem. So we will have to wait and see until maybe a week or 10 days time till samples start going off to the maltsters to see if it's going to be an issue or not. But I would imagine that there probably will be an element of it, as it is quite prevalent across most of the country. So we probably won't be any exception as far as that goes. Spring oats, we grow predominantly spring oats, and I would say we're about 10 days away from making a start into that. It does look a good crop, albeit that we're maybe slightly later than last year, and I would say a bit more of an uneven crop. The very last stuff might be quite late on, but I guess the determining factor, not only for that, but also for the whole of the harvest, will probably be the weather that we receive in the month of September. So if September is kind to us, we could probably come off not too bad, but otherwise there could be a little bit of a battle on our hands, but we'll just have to see how that pans out given time. But hopefully we get a good spell of weather for the kind of next 6 weeks or so, and we can hopefully get harvest into store and wrapped up for 2023.
That was Ranald Angus in Caithness, finishing up our harvest special for this year. A challenging one it has been for sure, and thank you to all the farmers who sent me their reports: Richard Heady, John Pawsey, Martin Lines, Charles Anyan, Andrew Wilson and Ranald Angus. I'd love to hear from you as to how your experience of harvest has been this year. You can contact us on Twitter or Instagram at MTF_podcast, or email hello@ruralpodmedia.co.uk. One request from me, I would really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. That honestly really helps in letting other people know that we exist. And I also just really like hearing your feedback. So that would be really appreciated. Thank you very much in advance. Next time, we'll be talking pigs, because it's been a while since we have talked pigs, and I'll be in Suffolk with Mark Jagger. Thanks to our primary podcast sponsor, A-Plan Rural Insurance, for supporting the show. Please see the show notes for more information and for any links mentioned today. For now, though, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.